Yeah, let's talk to Martin Gower, former NHS Trust Chairman, because we've got Wes Streeting today making a speech to the NHS Providers Annual Conference. And he's going to be talking tough, apparently. Wes Streeting reckons that basically he's going to sack NHS managers who fall by the wayside and do not get their hands dirty and do not start reducing the waiting times for people both in hospitals and elsewhere. Martin, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Now,
I've sacked quite a few managers in my lifetime, and I think the secret of it is don't announce that you're going to sack people.
No.
Threatening people with being sacked, that isn't exactly going to create a great culture in the places where they maybe need to be sacked.
No. Funnily enough, I've got this from Nick in Woking, because Elon Musk has been taken on by Donald Trump as sort of head of efficiency, which I think is a good idea. Nick says Elon Musk sacked 75% of Twitter staff and it still worked perfectly well. He could come here and slash 75% of our bloated civil servants, lords and MPs, and no doubt everything would run a lot smoother. I mean, Elon Musk is probably the answer. If you could get him to run the NHS, you'd be in good shape.
Yes, I don't think he should run it, but I could probably sort it. Mike, this is absolutely ridiculous, and it's so naive. It's so evidenced incompetence and naivety among the people who are supposedly running the country.
Yeah.
The whole of the public sector has this sort of issue. The only possible silver linings, I think, are two things. One is that Wes Streeting does at least recognise that there needs to be reform. I don't think he's got a clue what he wants to do. Indeed, I've read that in his handout, in his press release, that he's going to involve the staff, the unions, and the last thing you want to do, actually, is to get NHS staff to advise you on how to reform the NHS.
Right.
And you certainly don't want to talk to the unions about reforming the NHS. All they're going to do is going to pour more money into it.
Right.
And actually, if you think about the reduction of waiting lists, which is the big key thing that he wants to achieve, there are so many issues that the NHS managers have very little control over. For example, the ability of social care to get people back out of hospitals. The access to GPs, which is slowing down the rate at which people get referred,
right.
And then when they are referred, their illness is far more critical. So it's just bonkers, and I'm sorry, I got quite angry when I read all this, because I've heard it all before. It's not going to happen. But the other little silver lining is that they've involved Alan Milburn, who was actually one of the good Secretaries of State. There are not many of them. There's been 38 since the NHS was formed 70 years ago. But actually, he was, in fairness, one of the better ones, and he did more to give a bit of local accountability, which is what the NHS actually needed.
Yes, but when he was in charge of the NHS, of course, it was a very different beast, because this country of ours was a very different beast. It was a very much less populated country, and I think an awful lot of the problems, and Wes Streeting and the Labour government will never acknowledge this, a lot of the problems in the NHS stem from the fact there's too many people here. And the fact is there's more people here than there have ever been accessing a system which is not really fit for purpose.
That's true, Mike. But of course, you need more people on the front line. And the problem with the NHS has been, in my view, certainly I got involved, first of all, with the NHS in 2009. And I had 11 years working in the NHS in non-exec and then 2 chairman roles. And actually, my take on it was quite simple. It was the lack of focus on the patient and what they needed to do.
Yeah.
Their job was to help sick people recover and to do their best to help people not to get sick.
Yeah.
And actually, if they just focused on that and got rid of all the peripheral things, the obvious things like DEI or whatever they're called, the diversity, inclusion and all that. If they stop that, they should all go.
Yeah.
If Musk was here or if Trump was here, and I have strong American connections. In fact, I was in America for much of the election campaign in the middle of October, middle to the end of October. And actually, it's the same sort of issues. We're overburdened with all sorts of quangos and regulations. I know what will come out of this so-called reform. They'll bring in, McKinsey's and others of the big management consultancy companies. They'll have lots of what they call workshops, and eventually a few minor things will change. But actually, because of what it is, it will not actually get it very much better.
No. But then we could be having these conversations, I suppose, Martin, forever, couldn't we? Because something's got to start happening. Somebody's got to get the bull by the horns, and somebody's got to try and at least make something happen inside the NHS. They've already given them £20 more billion, and these are now reforms sort of after the fact, if you like. They've already got the money. They've probably already spent the money. They've given it to junior doctors. They're going to give some more money to consultants. GPs are still kind of on a work to rule. The whole system is creaking. And meanwhile, I hear from people who say they can't get an appointment to see their doctor within 2 weeks. They can't get an appointment fixed at a hospital within a year. You know, a friend of mine had a problem. His daughter had a problem. She needed to get a scan done to see what was wrong. And the scan has been booked finally 8 months from now. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. And it's inconsistent.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a scan on my back because I was getting back pain last year.
All right.
And I phoned the radiology department in my local hospital and got it the next day.
Right.
So it's not all terrible, but a lot of it is.
Yeah.
The management aren't all bad guys, but some of them are really not very good. But they need to focus on their core mission and not get drawn into all this other stuff. And I tell you, the Streeting approach to it just demonstrates how bad it is for somebody who's never been involved in healthcare, never run a business, never been anywhere near being even a senior manager in a business, gets on their feet, and I can see him on the stage now, the NHS Providers Conference. I've been to that conference many times during my time, and I tell you, he will give a lecture to those people. They'll go away feeling a bit hacked off with the whole thing, and nothing much will happen very quickly. And what needs to happen, there's some simple things they could do, very simple things. Cut your non-clinical staff by at least 10% now. Then, by the way, you won't need the 20 billion. Make sure that people are focused on delivering the service. The NHS is there for the patients, not for the staff.
No, quite. So much that we could talk about, Martin, but we've got to run, unfortunately. Thank you very much indeed. Good to talk to you, former NHS Trust Chairman there, Martin Gower.